Why learn a language nobody speaks? Are you learning Irish or another language spoken by relatively few people compared to the world's big languages? Have you heard this question, this rather withering idea? It's quite an insult, really, because first of all, it's not nobody. In the case of Irish Gaelic, estimates actually vary as to how many people speak it as a first language. Wikipedia, based on 3 sources, tells us that the estimated number of so-called fully native Irish speakers ranges from 40,000 to 80,000 people, depending how you build your statistics. To use a different descriptor, daily use outside the education system, according to the 2022 census, which of course is people self-reporting, it's almost 72,000 people. So that's not nothing, though it is a decline since earlier data, and that's a whole separate topic. We know the language is at risk. That's surely a reason to learn it and practice it, not a reason against. The problem here isn't actually the language or the languages spoken by fewer than the majority languages in the world. The problem is the question. Why learn any language if we're going to be that extreme? I'm kind of suspicious about where the question comes from and what the actual attitudes are toward language learning of the people who ask it. Why don't we all just use machine translation and not bother? Or stay in our own corner and stick to being monolingual? I mean, it's really coming out of that kind of mindset. The problem with these arguments is that they arise from resistance to learning any kind of language at all. And that's what you'll usually find is behind them. Perhaps from the fear of abstraction, the preference for practicality. And what makes me suspect this is that if you are learning one of the world's majority spoken languages, many people still try and raise an objection and say something like, why are you learning French when in Australia it would be more practical to learn Chinese or Indonesian, being places either that are nearer or that are trading partners? And you get the picture, it goes on. The practicality is always used for arguing that you shouldn't be doing what you're doing. But the person saying it in no way intends to study Chinese or Indonesian themselves, or really intends you to. So it's kind of a non-issue. It's coming out of something else altogether. People who say such things often have no idea. It's interesting to quiz people how many people in the world use each language they've heard of. So it's kind of pulled out of thin air as an objection. A bit like the one used against animal rights, where people say, but if your house was burning down, does that mean you would save your dog before your baby? Well, again, a kind of non-question designed to wrong foot the person. These arguments also seem to arise from some kind of idea that there's only so much language pie or energy to learn a language to go around, and you're wasting your slices, or you're using it up on a lesser experience, which I think is another fallacy. I think that languages are among humans' greatest accomplishments. There's lots of dubious accomplishments that humans tout as their cause or evidence of our greatness. But I think language is fairly indisputably something that has been created communally. And, it's a kind of shared effort. It's incredibly varied and also intermeshed. I think that languages carry the riches of experience and transcend time in that way, even though they change across time. So endlessly shareable. Any of them, for that reason, is worth studying, learning, and persisting with. So why Irish in my own case? Well, it's not the only language that I've studied. When I first spent a substantial amount of time in Ireland, I found myself intrigued and also frustrated by place names, wanting to understand not only how to say them, but what they meant, and how that would teach me something about where I was, not only about the people, but about the actual features of the place. An rud is anaf is intach. What's rare or seldom is wonderful. It isn't that uncommon to want to learn the language of a place that you fell in love with. I'm sure other people can relate to that. A very deep emotional attachment is a strong motivation to learn. If you're learning Irish or Irish Gaelic, what are your reasons? Please tell me in the comments section, and also please subscribe.